Hello, NugRadio, welcome back. Hello, NugRadio, and welcome back. This is Americans for Safe Access. I'm Marcus Boyd, and this is the Marijuana is Medicine Hour. And I'm your host, co-host, and I have with me Eugene Davidovich.
Thank you, Marcus. It's great to be here.
All right, and today our show is not yet, I don't think, being broadcast on video, but I understand soon we'll be, NugRadio will be broadcasting live video from the studio as well. We're going to start today's show with, I guess, probably the federal news with Americans for Safe Access, and we'll take that to Eugene. Eugene?
Thanks, Marcus. There's a lot going on in the community right now across the nation. We are going to talk a little bit about some of the things listed in the national newsletter, which you can download online if you visit safeaccessnow.org. You'll find the June 2011 newsletter. And one of the big news that has come out over the last month was that Americans for Safe Access has filed suit against the federal government over the rescheduling delay. Over 9 years ago, there were several groups, a coalition called the Coalition for Rescheduling Cannabis, which included Americans for Safe Access, Patients at a Time, and several individually named patients filed papers in federal court to compel the government to repetition or reclassify medical cannabis. This was in 2002. Well, recently, this coalition once again filed a suit led by Americans for Safe Access to compel the Obama administration now to answer this 2002 petition to reclassify medical marijuana. The federal government's strategy has been delay, 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 said Americans for Safe Access Chief Counsel Joe Elford, who's the lead attorney for the action. It is past time for the government to answer our rescheduling efforts. Since they are being unreasonable, we're asking the court for a resolution. So hopefully we will see some change in the federal government here, and that may be coming really soon. We may see a reclassification in cannabis, possibly to Schedule 3. I know that's probably the first thing that everybody would want to know is, well, what schedule would it be on? Personally, I think it should be removed entirely from the schedule, but this lawsuit and this first step is going to take putting it in Schedule 3, which would force the DEA and the federal government to acknowledge publicly the medical value of marijuana for the first time. Also, another huge, in other huge news across the nation, 3 new medical cannabis measures are now before Congress. 3 bipartisan medical cannabis bills were introduced in Congress last month with support from Americans for Safe Access and other patient advocates. These bills would respectively reclassify cannabis as a drug with medical use, protect access to financial services for patients and providers, and rein in aggressive audits of providers by the IRS. So those 3 individual bills, the most significant of the 3 bills is H.R. 1983, the state's Medical Marijuana Protection Act of 2011, which provides a medical necessity defense for patients and caregivers facing charges in federal court. This legislation was introduced by Representative Barney Frank, a Democrat from Massachusetts. H.R. 1983 also reclassifies marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3, which would have medical value. Congress, now remember, put cannabis in Schedule 1 more than 40 years ago, which puts it on the same category as heroin and other drugs that have absolutely no medical value, according to the federal government. Now, the other bill, H.R. 1984, which is the Financial Services Bill, and it's known as the Small Business Banking Improvement Act of 2011, that, if passed, will allow banks and other financial institutions to provide services to medical marijuana businesses without being subject to suspicious activity reporting requirements. Wells Fargo, Citicorp, Bank of America are just among many institutions that have summarily closed banks and other financial service accounts of medical cannabis providers under direct pressure from the Department of Treasury. Introduced by Representative Jared Polis, a Democrat from Colorado, H.R. 1984 is co-sponsored also by Representatives Frank, Stark, and Ron Paul from Texas. So this is a bipartisan bill. In states that have legalized medical marijuana and for businesses that have been state approved, it is simply wrong for the federal government to introduce and threaten banks that are involved in legal transactions, said Representative Polis. Now the final bill, the third one, is known as H.R. 1985, or the Small Business Tax Equity Act of 2011. And that one would change the federal tax code to allow a deduction for expenses in connection with the trade or business of selling marijuana intended for patients for medical purposes pursuant to state law. This was introduced by Representative Stark, and again, a bipartisan bill supported by Representatives Frank Polis, Ron Paul, and Dana Rohrabacher from California. Our tax code undercuts legal medical marijuana dispensaries by preventing them from taking all the deductions allowed for other small businesses. For-profit, non-profit, it doesn't matter. And this bill, H.R. 1985, would fix that once and for all. So remember, 3 bills really important to look out for: H.R. 1983, 1984, and 1985. H.R. 1983, the Medical Marijuana Protection Act, which provides the medical necessity defense; 1984, the Small Business Banking Improvement Act; and 1985, the Small Business Tax Equity Act. All of those need your support, need your calls to Congress to get these passed and approved. Marcus, did you want to add something?
I wanted to talk about the new ASA 3.0. Have you heard about that?
I did. That was the next topic of discussion, actually.
Outstanding. Well, then you would know it's a new and improved program for patients and activists. In support of new legislative initiatives in Congress, Americans for Safe Access last month launched 3 new improved programs for medical cannabis patients and advocates, dubbed ASA 3.0. The programs equip patients, advocates with new lobbying tools, an online information center, and an online tool for rapid response to federal raids. The programs were developed in response to feedback and ideas generated in the medical cannabis stakeholders meeting ASA has been holding across the nation. The Medical Cannabis Think Tank and Policy Shop is the new policy lobbying tool that provides activists the information and support they need to analyze pending or proposed legislation and to lobby officials for better laws. You know, they were able to talk to Steph Scher about that, and she said, while state medical cannabis laws vary tremendously, the needs of patients remain consistent across the nation, and many regulations look good on paper, but their impact can be detrimental to patients and to the patients that they're trying to help. The new ASA Online Training Center gives patients and activists across the nation everything that they need to make sure that they stay as safe as they can. ASA has developed over many years. The Online Training Center includes more than 4 hours of streaming video presentations, over 400 pages of introduction manuals and worksheets for developing skills that are effective that advocates really do need. Advocates asked for support in developing grassroots community, so we created the online training, said Steph Scher. If we are going to keep safe access, we know we need to build and fight every level of the political spectrum. There's no way that you can stop at your city level or your state or your county. You have to go federal. You have to go to each one of them, and you have to be aware of what's going on in each one of them in order to that you become involved and how to become involved. So that's why they did it for us.
And you know, ASA 3.0, it really is a combination of tools handed down from generations of social change movements, a patient's history of our movement, experiences over a decade of experimentations in democracy, and the blood and sweat of thousands of advocates. It was truly designed to give supporters of medical cannabis the tools they need to become effective advocates in your local municipality, whether it's San Diego, whether it's Imperial Beach, whether it's Chula Vista. But if you visit the website, take a look at the online RAID Training Center and the other sections that have been updated specifically for ACES 3.0 new launch, you will find every single tool that you need to make effective change on a local level that will help drive the national agenda for safe access for patients across this country. Now, the next huge news across the nation, and I call these huge news because we really are seeming to be in the middle of a shift in the paradigm of how this country has accepted and has dealt with medical cannabis laws and cannabis laws for that matter. We just saw Maryland and Delaware join the list of states that have legal medical cannabis laws. Last month, the governors of both Maryland and Delaware signed the new medical measures into law that makes 17 states, comprising more than a third of the United States population, with laws